Welcome to This Team is Killing Us, a podcast about what the Carolina Panthers do to good people. She is Lauren Brownlow. I am Dimitri Ravanos. And Lauren, what is killing me today is I thought I knew this team. And it would seem that the problem is not that I don't. The problem is I do know this team, and they fooled me for the last 5 weeks.
It's not, okay, to be fair to you, like, you're newer,
Sure,
and I understand
sure.
you're used to them just losing all the games, or
Right.
most of them,
Right.
Which admittedly is somewhat have been an adjustment for me as well.
Mhm.
But like, what I know well is the Panthers teams of old, that whenever you thought a certain thing about them and you're like, oh, here we go. This is the time. Now you know why I was a little nervous even going into like the Raiders game.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
Well, and I think I understand better, right? Because my impression was you were nervous going into the Raiders game, because why wouldn't you be, based on what we have seen the last, at that point, year and a few weeks?
Like, even though I knew the Raiders were a tire fire disaster,
Yeah.
I also know that this team, this team wasn't playing obviously well necessarily going into that game. So you're right. I had more to be nervous about from that perspective.
Mhm.
But it's also about, like, just because they're playing a team that's bad doesn't mean they're going to, like, they are likelier to play up to their competition.
Right.
And they've always been like this than they are to play like, than they are to like play to the level they should against a team that, at least on paper, they should be better than, or at least equal to. You know what I mean? Like, that's how they've been playing, certainly. And Dallas had been a hot mess. And certainly they gave indications of that throughout, especially in the first half, that they were still a hot mess. But the Panthers were like, we'll be messier.
So I said this in the post-game show video. Like, I really do want to put the game, like, behind us, right? Like, dwelling on it is not going to help anything. I will say, I do wonder, coming out of that game, does this team have what it takes to bounce back from regression? Regression was bound to happen, but it's like, okay, what do you do next? Yeah,
and I think, like, what was frustrating to me even during that game, and why I'm a little reluctant to say, oh, they definitely will, is because, you know, it's like anytime anything bad happened, they were just like, well,
yeah.
And it's like, no, you can go out there and make something good happen, you know? Like,
and the thing, when bad things happened, it always came back to the offensive line, whether it was penalties, whether it was no protection.
Oh my God. The false starts, they're trolling me, right? Like, someone...
You gave the stat in your column. How many was it in the game?
I mean, by the way, I started writing my column in the third quarter.
Yeah.
Because I'm not new here, you know? Like, oh, maybe they'll come back. So who cares, you know? Like, I don't care how much they come back. Like, they were down too much. I knew that. It was like late in the third. By that point, they had 5 false starts at home.
Yeah.
Okay, 5. And 3 on third down. Please, someone help me. Why? Why all on third down? Is that a special down? It's almost like the moment, you know, it's like the moment gets too big for them. It's like, ooh, third down.
Right.
And that's what bothers me about it. It's not so much like the losing or the sloppiness or the turnovers or the sacks or the, you know, whatever, fill in the lengthy list. It's more like just this like notion of, oh, it's third and long. Even when Dallas in the ball, oh, it's third and long. Oh, we'll just give a big old run. Oh, it's 3rd and 5. Well, now it's 3rd and 10. Because we're going to false start at home. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, why?
It's weird to kind of say it this way, right? But like, the defense is like, they're struggling, but the defense is kind of a mash unit at this point, particularly up front.
And now it's gotten worse. So that's cool.
The offensive line is not. The offensive line, everybody is playing where they started the season at this point.
I don't know.
Except Cade Mays, who at this point has been your starting center more often than anyone else.
Who's Dallas's defensive coordinator again?
At this point, I don't know now that Dan Quinn is gone.
Right. But I'm like, clearly they knew something about like, because like no team this season has played the O-line like that. I can't remember one. Maybe the Bears.
Ooh.
No team has pushed that O-line around like that. Like, they couldn't run the ball.
I would say game 1 they got pushed around. But you're right. Like, it's been a while.
Right. And so that's the other part that's the part that's frustrating too, is it's like, why are they just all of a sudden getting manhandled?
Yeah.
Like, where is this coming from?
Right. Like, don't get me wrong, the fumbles were bad, but so many of the fumbles were in the backfield, you know, a matter of broken protection.
Yeah.
Interception, there was one bad interception and one was like just a fluky bounce. I'm not going to lose my mind over that.
Exactly.
I
did think about his small hands.
Oh, sure.
At least once. And I was like, oh, I hate that I'm doing
You texted me that he should have the hand stretch.
The exercise thing just to make his hands stronger. You know, those things that people used to use to like do hand exercises or whatever. Yeah.
All right. So I said, how do you bounce back from regression, particularly after it's not like this team was on a winning streak? They just looked good. You know, you're talking about two guys now that haven't been in this situation before. Canales as a head coach. And Bryce, I don't like this is the first time he's strung together a lot of good play. And so for it all to go away so suddenly in one fell swoop, I do wonder what happens next week.
Yeah, me too. Is this a road game or a home game? I forgot.
This is a home game. This is the last home game of the year.
Oh, no. I feel like they don't play well at home. And neither do the Cowboys, by the way, which probably explains a lot. Maybe that's part of it. I think that I saw the stat. I think they were like that put them to like 6-2 on the road or something. Which
6-2 on the road and what 1 in whatever the remainder is at home. I think.
Okay, that's still funny.
At some point, we should talk about the curtain, Jerry.
But I did tell you, I was like, they're favored. I hated it. We're never favored against the Cowboys. I just didn't like any part of it. But I didn't know it would go like this. And I mean, does it carry over? Yeah, I don't know, because like there was a lot of like proof of concept and like validation that things were working, and then this sort of threw a spanner in the works. I guess it depends on how quickly they kind of like identify what the problems were, and like maybe there was something schematic that they weren't able to adjust to. Maybe somebody was having a bad day on the like I mean, I know lots of them were having it wasn't just Icky or anybody else. Like Icky had a bad day, but so did a lot of people. Like even Robert Hunt had some, and he's one I've learned to rely on.
Hunt and Mays, I was surprised to see them getting false start penalties.
And getting pushed around a little bit.
Right. Mays had multiple false starts. Hunt
he had a wide receiver false start. That was a fun one. Love
my God. just an awful game. So what do you think now if they come out, let's say they come out and look like that against Arizona this week?
Welp. I mean, it's not good.
Like, is it really that simple of like, oh, everything we saw before was nice and we'll have those memories, but this is who this team is?
I mean, if you look that bad, yeah. You know, I'm not saying like if they lose, we're still, you know, depressed and hand wringing. Again, like it's like anything else. Literally, like they lost the 3 games before. It's not like they were on a winning streak. Like that's the thing that we have to remember. You know, so it's not just losing. It's like how it looks.
And I sort of made this point after the Eagles game of like, hey, the oh so close is kind of getting old, and it really.
Maybe that's been part of it too, right?
Sure. We'll see, and that's why to me this feels so deflating. Is like we didn't even get the benefit, or maybe benefit is the wrong word. We didn't even get the fun of that next step forward of actually beating someone we shouldn't.
Exactly. That's part of it, I think, right? Is like they got all this good, maybe in some ways it's like a worst case scenario for coach because you're getting all this good press for losing. You know, and you can read it and be like, yes, we're on the right track. And now we're playing Dallas, and Dallas sucks, and we should be able to beat them at home. All fair things to think, by the way, but like, it's not that simple, and you still got to go out and do it, you know? And maybe they weren't ready for how much Dallas loves playing away from Jerry World. Wouldn't you?
Did you see the shot of Jerry in the booth looking up at the scoreboard like he's never seen his team in front before? He looked so happy.
Thankfully, no, because that would have just added. Ugh.
Yeah,
because I hate losing to them ever.
Speaking of leadership, did you see Diana Rossini's piece last week? Sort of a collection of what she's hearing around the league, but she kind of went in depth on where the Teppers are with this team right now.
The Teppers.
Yeah. There are people, you and I talked about this in the offseason. There are people that really hate that now when we talk about the ownership group, we talk about the Teppers and not Dave Tepper, because Nicole is a part of this. Like, I don't think she has outsized influence, but I think he asks his wife what she thinks about things. I don't think that's crazy.
No, that in itself isn't. But at the same time, it's like it's almost like a layer removed. You know what I mean? Like where it's like he owns the team. I guess they own it together because it's their property. So in that way, it does kind of track a little bit. But it's also like, you know, you did hear stuff about, especially when Bryce was struggling. You heard stuff about like her being getting the best vibes from Bryce and like her being the one to like really push that or one of the ones to really push that with like drafting him over Stroud or whatever. And so I think, and look, you know me, I'm not going to jump on any bandwagon to blame women. Right. So that's not what I'm even talking about, but it's just like already we don't want David making football decisions. Like I don't want either of them like, to be clear, it's not just Nicole, like, but it's also like, oh, we're adding another Tepper to the mix when we want neither.
Yeah. And listen, Diana Rossini said that an executive of another team told her that it is clear that this executive singles out Dave, but let's say the Teppers have learned the value of, quote, letting football people do football things. She adds that she has heard that there is real belief in this group and probably some relief.
Fair. I get it.
Yeah, probably some relief when it comes to Bryce, but definitely belief in the fact that Dan Morgan seems to understand how to A, rebuild this team, and B, how to rebuild this team within the limits of the salary cap.
Right.
So that is very positive. They seem to be very high on Dave Canales, even, despite the results so far, despite even sometimes.
I'd mostly agree with that, by the way.
I agree.
Long term, yes.
I understand it. And I would say that even with the complaints you and I have had about Dave Canales, those are things that you expect a guy to grow from.
Yeah.
And I think it shows maturity on the part of Dave Tepper, if not both the Teppers, that they can recognize that.
This was one of those games for me where I'm not saying I don't blame him at all.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, when you come out and look like that, it's going to be on the coach at least a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But at the
I think it's fair to say that he regressed from the previous, at least the previous week in terms of aggression.
Somewhat, yeah, but at the same time, like it reminded me, like you alluded to the Saints game, and like it did remind me more of that, where like almost, although like this was closer at halftime, maybe that's why I brought up the Bears, because I think the Panthers were still like in that game around halftime, and then it all just like snowballed out of control. But like it reminded me of just games where they just haven't been able to do anything, and so it's really almost hard to know, did he call plays well or not? Because like almost every series after the first one, because the first one was good.
Yeah.
They marched right down the field. It was great.
Yeah.
That offensive possession was fantastic. But then every other, it was like a turnover or, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like hard to get into a rhythm and like, or 3 and out. And it was like they were false starting or they were putting themselves behind the chains. Bryce was getting sacked. And so like, it's hard for me to get a sense of his play calling being good or bad. I can't even be mad they weren't running Chuba because there really wasn't.
Yeah.
It quickly became apparent that wasn't going to happen. So
I do think though, like the one thing where I wonder a little bit about what he's learned or how tepid he can be sometimes. The one thing that I do question is not so much not running Chuba, because you're right, they were behind. They had to throw the ball at that point. But there really was not, and this might go back to the offensive line problems. There really was not a lot of creativity to find Chuba space outside from that one run he broke for, I think, 10 or 12, something like that. Like, he had, 10 carries for 32 yards in this game.
It was just, like literally the Cowboys D-line behaved as if they had not eaten in months, and the Panthers offensive players were food.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just like, what is going on right now?
Well, I said this a couple of weeks ago, and this to sort of put a bow on the Rossini column, like it is nice that after games like this, the owner is not looking for a microphone anymore.
Right. We speculated. We've been speculating on this a little bit because we haven't heard much from Tepper. Right. And so we were like, maybe he's learning some lessons of like shutting up and just like, and maybe he's learning some lessons in staying out of it. And I think we've both certainly expressed like our approval of the job like Dan Morgan's done. And, like a guy, I've been proven wrong more than once about some of these guys, you know, Coker, for example, like what a find that was and like how he's been great. And, I mean, sticking with Bryce has paid off and all of that. And so like, it's good that Tepper also sees that and also wants to just like shut up and sit there and do what he's supposed to do, which is literally nothing.
Do you think it's killing him?
I hope so.
As we head towards the holidays, don't forget you can give the gift of OG Fans. That is our exclusive subscription service where you can get all of our Panthers coverage. That's where Lauren writes her Panthers column each and every Monday. You can also read her thoughts on pop culture and movie and TV reviews from there, every single Friday. Plus, we've got Canes coverage, ACC coverage, and so much more. Go on, Mark.
Going to see Night Bitch tomorrow.
I told you.
So I'll write about it.
I told you that it's weird. Like, this thing got really bad reviews at the festival circuit. And now that Amy Adams
from there, like, people either really like kind of dug it or like did not like it.
Yeah, see, I've heard a lot of. I'm sorry, I should say I've not heard a bad thing about Amy Adams. What I've heard a lot of is
the movie itself,
this just doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, it's like they made a trailer and had to build a movie around it.
I've definitely, I was going to say, I've seen some movies like that recently too, where the trailer does suck you in and you're like, this looks great. And then you watch it and you're like, oh no.
Yeah. But. All right. Well, you can get all of that with OG fans. And like I said, if you go to ogtrianglemedia.com, maybe you're already a subscriber. You can give the gift of OG fans to somebody else. All kinds of different plans available to do that. And when you sign up for OG fans, you are going to get a discount to enjoy our friend Bomani Jones and the Basketball Jones at the Rialto. That is happening in Raleigh, January 31st, the night before the first Duke-Carolina game of the season. It is Bo, it is Obius and Gilio, it is Lauren Brownlow, it is Tyler Hansborough, Marcus Ginyard, and more guests are going to be announced in the new year. But please make plans to join us. Go to therialto.com or eTix to get your tickets for the Basketball Jones. The defense, Lauren.
Oh, bless.
If it was not already an island of misfit toys, it is now even more so, especially in the linebacker core. Trevin Wallace, who was having a really nice rookie season, out for the year.
Yeah.
Claudin Cherilus, who has been on and off the injury report throughout the season. His year is over. They have promoted Jacoby Windman from the practice squad. But here's the thing. They promote him immediately into a starting role.
Well,
because they do not have the bodies. John Radigan, who was signed largely for special teams play, is now getting reps on defense.
Is this like the level of having I shouldn't call him that. The tiny.
Oh, Devin Tompkins, the little fella.
I guess he's not even a running back, so I shouldn't say it. I think whatever first listing we found of him, he was listed as a running back. Yeah. But I guess they should just call him like utility offensive player or whatever. Special, yeah. When he had to come in, and you're like, oh no.
Yeah, an athlete, if you will.
Yeah, flex. A flex on your fantasy team. A flex. Yeah.
Yeah, I look, the defensive line, obviously from the moment Derek Brown goes down, this is not going to be a normal season. I think I've been very critical of Ishiro Evero all year long. I think there are things in this defense I just cannot believe they don't know how to do. But
I mean, look,
I tip the hat.
And
I guess
I've defended because, like, you look at their personnel and you're like, we did before the season too, and we were like, no one's good.
Yeah.
So to me, I've actually would have been more impressed with what they've been able to do in recent weeks against some dangerous offenses. Don't know what happened last week, but
I think what is frustrating, and this is not necessarily on Evero, this could be on the player, but like, you think about the game that DJ Wanham had in Germany. Where did he go? Like, he's still healthy. He just hasn't shown up since then.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, you are getting good games here and there out of Jadeveon Clowney, but
I think that's like the best you can hope for, though, if you're like if you're in charge of this personnel. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to hope that occasionally some of these guys blow up and play great, and you're going to have some days like last week too.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about Derek Brown a lot, but Shaq's season has been over since week 2.
Yep.
And now that has turned into Shaq's season ended in week 2. Week 3, Josie Jewell went out for an extended period of time, but he's back.
Yes. And now he's been great.
Yeah, but now it's like especially the middle of the linebacking core.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Josie Jewell and in the old Batman series with Adam West, when they would climb the side of a building and a celebrity would poke their head out to see what that's what it's like every week.
I mean, yeah. And then also, I mean, let's be honest, like, the backfield has been a mess.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of the year, which we kind of knew, but
you have moments where you see what it is JC Horn was supposed to be. right?
Yeah, he had some nice moments actually on Sunday.
You have
it was just
moments,
everyone else was also there, so that was kind of a problem.
You have
Dallas
moments
was like,
where
cool.
you see how guys like a Jackson.
Yep, Jackson's
can
had some
be
okay moments.
a starter in the NFL, but these are moments like nobody can string it together. No. And look, maybe asking a defensive back to string together greatness is a big ask. I get that at the NFL level, but reliability can't be like this hard, can it?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, you look at you're saying it out loud and you can see it too, right? Literally every level of this defense has enormous injury and personnel issues.
Absolutely.
And we knew that going in, and now it just keeps getting worse. And so, for me, anything Evero's able to do, I'm just kind of like, great. Sure. How did you do that? Even I remember right after Bryce's first fumble, the defense actually got a 3-and-out stop. And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
The rest of the game happened. But at the same time, I was like, I can't even believe they just did that.
It's funny you say that, because in that moment, there was a part of me that wondered, oh, is this going to be the kind of game we win by just keeping their defense on the field the whole time?
Right.
Oops.
Well, let's just go 3-and-out for another couple hours as a treat.
Can you once again give the stat you gave in your article about the 3-and-out versus turnover prowess through the first 3 quarters of the game?
It was after that touchdown drive, the offense went 3-and-out on every single other drive or turned it over on every drive except for, I think it was until the 9-minute mark of the fourth quarter when that shifted, when they were already down by 20 some.
Mm-hmm.
But they, except for that one play, which, by the way, I will give this game this. It did give me one of the funniest NFL end of half sequences in an NFL game I have ever seen.
Yeah.
The Panthers turn it over. I think wasn't that what it was like? The Panthers turn it over, then Dallas promptly fumbles.
Yes.
When they're about to score. And I'm convinced. I'm like, oh no, they're going to go score. They're going to go up 2 scores. This is going to almost put it away at this point. Then they fumble about to go into the red zone. They're on the broadcast. They're like, oh, Dallas had this problem all year. They can't hold on to the ball and score in the red zone. And I'm like, oh, cool. Dallas is Dallasing. Yay. And then the very next play, Bryce floats it over the top and finds, who was it? Was it Coker? It was Coker. Yeah. Who just jets down the field. No one was near him for Dallas. And I'm just I'm squealing with laughter in my room. I'm like, what? How are they going into halftime down 1 right now? With what a disaster the second quarter was.
Right.
I'm like, how is this even possible? So I'm feeling great at halftime. I'm like, oh, great. And then,
it's interesting. Given the mass unit nature of the defense, I do not feel great about playing a quarterback like a Kyler Murray this week. However,
no.
I also feel like you never know when Kyler Murray's just going to decide he's not into it.
Yeah.
And that gives me some hope.
Relatable. That's why I've always liked that about Kyler Murray in a way. I'm sure Arizona fans don't. Sure. That's fine. But you know what? That's not my problem.
Right.
But it's relatable. I'm like, yeah, because sometimes we all have days where we're just like, you know what? I don't feel it. And I love how honest he sometimes is. Even though, again, I'm sure they would rather he not be.
Yeah. Scott Fowler of the Charlotte Observer has been doing this series talking to various people that made an impact on the sports scene in Charlotte. This series has gone back years and years. But this week, he talked to Luke Kuechly, who obviously walked away from the game at what would be his peak years, although Kuechly sort of told Scott Fowler that he retired at 28 because he knew he could never play at 100% again. I got the impression from reading this, as much as he is enjoying the media side of things, there is still some pain in Luke Kuechly about walking away when he did. Not that he thinks he made a mistake, but that he looks at a bunch of guys he came in with, and they're all still in the league. They're all still getting a paycheck.
It was interesting to me, actually, how, to me, it was very clear it was because of his concussions.
Yeah.
But he didn't seem to want to say that either, which I thought was interesting.
Well, so you would probably have a better recollection of this than me. So he says that there was no choice. He knew he would never be able to play at 100% again.
But
do you remember a major physical injury?
Besides the concussion.
Well, so I'm talking about in this case, I'm putting the concussion in
to remember what other
brain health, not joints and bones and stuff like that.
Had an ankle or a knee or something, but I don't remember anything specific.
I don't remember anything keeping him out for an extended period of time outside of, well, it was the 16 season, right? Where he got just concussion after concussion.
Yeah. It was
the 14 season.
Was it? I thought it was 16 because that's when everything sad happened to this team. But maybe I'm wrong. Honestly, like that was a sad season. Yeah. A lot of head stuff too. I remember Cam got hit in the head a bunch in the season opener at Denver. Yeah. And I was furious because they called none of them.
Right. Fowler kind of pressed him on like, well,
yeah, he did.
Like an 80%.
Yeah.
Luke Kuechly could probably still make it in the league.
That's why I'm convinced it's a head injury thing.
Right.
And maybe he just doesn't want to say that because I think like it's clear he's still working around youth football. Mm-hmm. And I understand that impulse to a point, like as a former player, of like him just wanting to be like, no, it's not. But like I think we know that. Like, yeah. I know that in my heart, even if maybe he doesn't even know that. Like maybe he's in some form of denial about it a little bit too.
Look, I mean, I think it is. I'm not. I think it is easy, especially like you think about the year that. So 2015, the year that Cam is the MVP, they go to the Super Bowl, and Kuechly like ascends to probably one of the 3 or 4 best defensive players in the league. We are
it was 2016 when he was crying, when he got carted off crying because he was so confused and upset and. I'll never forget that.
Yeah. The 15 and 16, probably 14, 15, 16.
Yeah. We are in the 13 height. A little too, but they turned the corner some in 13.
But see, what I'm saying is we are in the height of the concussion focus
100%.
At that point. And so I could see Luke Kuechly feeling like I did everything I was told to do. We were playing in this area where there had never been this kind of focus on our brain health before. Yeah. And this still happened. Like, that's got to be hard for him to accept.
Yeah. And look, that probably does. But also, like, he's a smart guy.
Absolutely.
You could tell that from the interview, too. And his dad telling him when he was a kid, like, go somewhere you couldn't get in without football. And I thought that was, pretty good advice, obviously. And, like, he wanted to go to Notre Dame. I'm sure they didn't recruit him or whatever.
He said he was a 3-star recruit and never heard from them.
Right. And so he went to BC and like for him, I'm sure, even if like there's some element of like, you have to have some distance from that, I feel like as a player of like the concussion part, because you just have to be okay with it. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure it was during the height of that. So you're seeing all these stories of like former players, like not being able to like use their brains the way they'd like after football. And I think that probably played a role in it too, for him of like, what damage am I doing to myself that like, I'm not going to be able to use my brain if this keeps up. Like whatever happened to him on the field in 2016, like I will never forget that in my whole life. I will never forget that. And I would imagine in some way he won't either, because it was so scary. And it was like, this is not worth, you just get to a point where you're like, this isn't worth like potentially losing touch with like my memories and who I am. And
even though like Scott Fowler asked him and he didn't answer directly that he was interested, I kind of got the impression that he does have coaching on his mind at some point.
For sure. I mean, I could see that 100%. And, he's on the broadcast, I guess. He was talking about how he's enjoying that. Mm-hmm. And, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean, he was a scout he's not still a scout, right?
No, he's fully broadcasted.
I thought so, but he was a scout before that. Yep. And so like, obviously he's, kind of started at the bottom, I guess, so to speak. And that's how a lot of the players start and then they work their way up. So
I thought this was interesting, just given his reputation as a player and also where he played on the field.
Yeah.
He seems to be really good at recognizing a quarterback that has his offense bought into him. I mean, like I found it interesting, given what we have heard Christian McCaffrey say, given what we have heard Greg Olsen say, like, forgive the generalization, a lot of the white former teammates seem to have fallen off of Cam's radar. And Cam will come out very publicly and say, well, to be fair, I fell off of your radar too. Right.
Like, mean like they're not talking as much or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, Cam, he's always been kind of a more I think if you saw him at the facility, they'd all be cool and like, Right.
I mean, like, probably, I think it was when the story came out about Christian McCaffrey's wedding, McCaffrey said something to the effect of like, Cam hasn't texted me in 3 years. Yeah. And Cam publicly said like, you've texted me once in 3 years.
Right.
Like,
I think it's mutual.
Right. Yeah. So I bring that up because like Luke seems to love Cam, like seems to really have a soft spot for Cam. And what stood out to me is everything he was saying about Cam as a leader, he was alluding to recognizing that in Bryce. Now, I think it's really important to note, he experienced Cam at the height of Cam. Like, he probably saw Cam as his best athletic self, his best leadership self, all that kind of stuff. And he recognizes Bryce can get there. not he sees it right now.
Right.
But I just found it very interesting that, and I have to imagine being a middle linebacker, you really key in on a quarterback having control of his team, and he seems to be able to recognize that in Cam and in Bryce.
I'm sure also he can recognize when a quarterback is like afraid. And well, and
see, that's what I wrote down. Like what he said he liked about Bryce is the work ethic, but never threw anybody under the bus and was always answering questions about having to get better. Yeah. Cam, like, I think to Cam's own fault, didn't throw guys under the bus. I mean, sometimes.
Cam, even when he first started with the Panthers, like, their defense was awful. He never complained about that ever. Never about his O-line, which was usually bad. To pretty good, but usually bad. And it's sometimes terrible. His wide receivers were, there was often a mess. But he never complained. And he also, like, I thought it was interesting as well the way he was talking about the fun aspect, because that was something that was almost infectious with Cam. And I think people often almost thought he was having too much fun. The fun police were out in the streets active when Cam Newton was around, and I think, like, just the joy that you play with when you're feeling good about, like, where things are going. And I was sad to see Bryce. Like, I get why, considering everything, but it did make my heart sink a little to see Bryce, like, standing on the sidelines looking very emo during the game. Now, again, I'm not one of those people that, like, oh, you're making bad like, you're human, you're allowed to have emotions. And, of course. It was nice to see him playing better towards the end of the game, because it's like, okay, he didn't let it, like, completely sink him, but just being able to see him have a moment of a smile. And, like, Cam was like this even sometimes when they were losing, just having a smile moment of, like, hey, because you got to have fun. And, like, when you're not having, like, I think the quote was something like, football is really miserable when you're not having fun. Kuechly said that. And it really stuck with me, because, like, Bryce, when he has had fun visibly, he has played way better.
I think Bryce, especially through his first, 18 games in the NFL, 19 games in the NFL, I think there is a segment of the Panthers fan base. There are obviously a lot of people that feel about Cam the way you do, that he can do no wrong. You will love him forever. But
I would say no wrong.
Well, I mean, but clearly he holds a very special place in your heart, even amongst Panthers.
He's the most exciting player. I mean, Steve Smith is my favorite former Panther, but, like, he's the most exciting player that's ever played here, and it's not close.
I think there is another segment of Panthers fans that are not the ones that, like, dismiss Cam outright, but there is a segment of Panthers fans that really he lost in the Super Bowl. And I think that segment feels very triggered, or easily got triggered by Bryce hanging his head, because it looked awful similar to the guy that didn't dive for that fumble.
I mean, I wouldn't. That's weird to me, because, like, if anything, I remember people getting bothered by Cam, like, whenever he would, like, smile when they were down, people would hate that. So, like, I don't know why they should be thrilled that he's, like, looking sad. That's what they want, isn't it?
When I remember the day after that Super Bowl, you and I and Mike were working together on the radio, and I remember
way too much of that.
I mean, I remember all of the conversations we were having about not diving on the fumble, about getting up and walking away from the media availability, all that kind of stuff. Which was always
worse to me.
I think as I've gotten further away from that and more invested in the Panthers, I wonder how much of just the hang on, that's not Cam is what it is that bothered so many people about that. Because you're right. Like, the people that didn't like that he was smiling all the time should have loved the fact that he was angry.
Saying. Yeah.
But I think that at some point you become accustomed to who your quarterback is. And when it is, when it's what Bryce is doing, where we became accustomed to having conversations of, are we going to have to draft a quarterback again? And now we don't. It takes some time to come around to that, to believe that that's real.
I think, like, that's the biggest thing that I hope that Bryce, like, is able to eventually take away from, like, I mean, the Cam Newton experience, if he's even looking to do that. It's just, to me,
I think and this is not Bryce. This is literally any young quarterback. I think to try and model anything off of Cam Newton is a failing proposition.
Hear me out, because I hear you. You're not wrong, because there's a lot of things Cam Newton can do that most of them can't.
Right.
Okay. But at the same time, I do think there's something to be said about like finding moments of joy.
Sure.
I don't want to be too cheesy with it, because like, yeah, you're a quarterback. Your demeanor's always studied. If you're looking like happy that you got a first down late in a game that you're losing, people might criticize that. But at the same time, Cam was always just so unapologetic about it. And it was like authentic. And I think that authenticity is a big part of what connected him to a lot of people, including his own teammates. You know, like they saw that authenticity in him and were like he wasn't happy they were losing. So but for him to be like, yeah, we got a first down. Like, cool. I'm happy. I can be at least, you know what I mean? Like, and he was just so unapologetic about that. I'm not saying Bryce needs the first down point, but like, if they have a nice play, I think it's okay if he cracks a smile.
Yeah.
You know, and I thought it was okay. I was happy to see at least some smiling happening like late in the game, not like huge ones. It's not like, but I was like, okay, good. You know, like I'm glad to see this side of Bryce come back out, because I said this during his rookie year. I think you probably remember this. He was so businesslike and like serious, even when he was playing okay. It was just like, I hate to be like smile more, because Lord knows I've heard that plenty in my life. But it's more just like have a better time. You know, like have fun. It is a game. Like I know it's very serious and it's his job. And like if he doesn't do well, it has serious consequences. But like that's why people gravitated to Cam so much, was like it was infectious, like the joy that he brought out there.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much when you're pressing and everything feels hard, it just becomes that much harder. You know what I mean? To like win a game, to like do the simplest thing, like not false start on a 3rd and 4. I don't know. Could we stop it? I can't take much more of it. There's no way the Panthers don't lead the league in that.